Hello, and welcome to another edition of Horror of Netflix.
I'm drinking AB negative. Sorry,
That's
I
it.
just cut you off.
That's funny you said that because I was watching Blade again the other day. Most people forget about Blade, which is something we can get into from rotten films with Manhunter, but like obviously the Marvel films have gone bananas now, but most people forget Blade was one of the first Marvel ones.
That was really big news in its day as well. Yeah,
People loved it, but let's not obviously forget the Roger Corman Marvel films. You ever seen them?
I've never seen one of his.
Captain America and Fantastic Four. Check them out if nothing else for the practical effects.
I've heard tell of the Fantastic Four one, but never actually seen it.
Yeah, there's something else. Anyway, I'm Callum, this is Alan.
Hello.
And the film we will be talking about today is Michael Mann's Manhunter.
I would like to hereafter refer to it as Michael Manhunter.
Michael Manhunter. It could be a good show. Sounds like a kind of cop show already, which is pretty much his forte. How many films do you need to direct, or how involved do you think you have to be in a film before your name goes in front of something?
That's a good point. Yeah. It's like Michael Mann's Manhunter by Michael Mann. A Michael Mann film.
Michael Mann. Yeah. But especially this one doesn't work so well because it's Michael Mann's Manhunter. Say that 3 times fast or don't. So this is a bit of a weird one because obviously this predates Silence of the Lambs and has Hannibal Lecter in it, but for most people Silence of Lambs is Silence of Lambs. Just like it sounds like some kind of massacre. Silence of the Lambs is very much most people's first exposure to Hannibal Lecter. So I mean, this was the first time you'd seen it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'd seen Red Dragon before, which is obviously the later adaptation of the Thomas Harris novel, which forms the basis of this film.
It's about renowned sex pest Brett Ratner, isn't it?
Yeah, I was actually surprised at that. I never realised that was a Brett Ratner film until I looked it up after I watched this one, because I was just thinking Brett Ratner for nothing else other than the Rush Hour films, so it's a bit of a leap to be doing that.
Was he first X-Men, or, because I always remember, because there's Bryan Singer and Brett Ratner, but they came in at, did Bryan Singer start it off and Brett Ratner took over?
That sounds right, yeah, don't quote us on this, but
and then smashed it into the ground with X-Men Last Round, which I think they've retconned now, which is always a good way of knowing you've done your job well.
It's no longer canon. But I greatly enjoyed this one. I mean, I was quite surprised at how different it is from Red Dragon. I mean, I think I don't want to say anything too negative about Red Dragon, partly because it's been so long since I've seen it that I can't really remember it all that clearly, but the main word I would have used for it is probably workmanlike. I mean, I think this feels much more, I hesitate to say artistic because, that's maybe a bit of a loaded term, but it feels like there's much more of a vision to it. I mean, Red Dragon kind of could have been a TV cop show in a way, but this feels like they're kind of gunning for something a little bit more highbrow, I almost want to say.
I think Red Dragon's also partially a victim of the success of Silence of the Lambs because, as we were saying, Hannibal Lecter is in Manhunter, but he's a very small part of it. Yeah. It's very similar to Silence of the Lambs in the same way that he's consulting with an FBI agent over another psychopath. So it's kind of like Psychopath of the Week again, basically. But basically what they've done is they had a very, very small part in it, but in Red Dragon there's a whole intro and everything where they have to establish the main character Will Graham's relationship with Hannibal Lecter, and it's just kind of a bit unnecessary.
I mean, it's when you see this film and you don't have that, you wonder why they needed it, other than to get more screen time with Anthony Hopkins in Red Dragon. Because I think this film feels very much like the FBI agent William Peterson, Will Graham. It's his film. He is very much the driving force in it. But in Red Dragon, it's more of an ensemble kind of thing. I know that Ed Norton is a fine actor, but I don't really remember him in that film very much. I mean, Red Dragon for me was all about kind of, it's not only Anthony Hopkins but also Ralph Fiennes. I thought was particularly good in that. But
Rafe,
sorry.
You can't say Ralph.
He is going to find me and beat me up now. Yeah. But this one it's a very different experience. It does feel very much focused on the main character as opposed to the killers and I say the killers, the serial killer, the Tooth Fairy in the other film. He's kind of more of a peripheral presence in this one. Would you say he's not got the same amount of screen time? But
very well portrayed by Tom Noonan.
That sounds right.
Yes.
Thanks for that. I've forgotten.
That's it. But they're both kind of very different in that way in terms of how they set it up as well. I think Red Dragon's got this ridiculous scene at the start where Ed Norton is like having dinner with Anthony Hopkins, and I think he shoots like Hannibal Lecter like 6 times or something, and he's fine later on, and then like he gets stabbed like twice as well, and that's supposed to be part of the reason, because when we start in Manhunter, Will Graham, who used to be like a FBI investigator, who was one of their best guys, was really good at getting into the minds of the psychopaths in that kind of cliche way now, is kind of semi-retired almost. He's kind of distanced himself from it because he got a bit too deep in with it. And you got little glimpses of his past, and you realise maybe why he was no longer doing it. Yeah. But as far as like Red Dragon, kind of rather than leaving that ambiguous, just went, this is what happened.
Yeah, they put everything on the table for
you. He had a knife fight with Hannibal Lecter. But it's strange from the point of view of they kind of go through that whole thing, and he's like, oh, he's got a darkness, and he's like, oh, I'll have a look at a couple of pictures, and before you know it, he's running around houses and visualising things and just about putting pants in his head to get into the mindset, but it very, very quickly changes. But I think there's a great tone to it as well, and there's some very, very good performances from it. But one thing that'd probably be good to mention would be Brian Cox.
That's true, yeah, we should really get round to him. He just... Again, he's really only in the film for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 minutes at the most, but...
Brian Cox is playing Hannibal Lecter in this movie.
Yeah, I should also mention that. But he really does... I wouldn't say that he dominates it exactly in the way that Anthony Hopkins does in Red Dragon, but he really does bring something to it.
It's a very different performance, which is interesting, because you look at like Red Dragon, and then you've got Edward Norton, and I like Edward Norton. I liked him in American History X and that other film he did, Incredible Hulk. And I think that he's a very good actor, but he almost kind of seemed that he didn't really know what to do to bring something to the character in Red Dragon, whereas like William Peterson playing Will Graham, kind of in terms of how it was set up, he made it his own kind of role, and he had something from it. Whereas Brian Cox could have very easily gone down the Anthony Hopkins route, which is a very iconic performance. But he made his own thing of it and was very good as a result of it.
I think he plays it more restrained than Anthony Hopkins does. I think when Anthony Hopkins comes on, you've got much. He's almost got a little bit of the pantomime villain about him, which I think is probably what makes him so memorable. He does kind of go at it full guns, and he makes this kind of larger than life version of Lecter. But Brian Cox feels, I think he's, if anything, more chilling, because he seems more believable. And
he's definitely more intimidating as well, because he's more restrained. And I think the difficult thing with Silence of the Lambs now, even though it's a brilliant film, is that it's kind of become such a big thing in public consciousness. It's really difficult to take Anthony Hopkins in it seriously now, because it's almost become like a parody.
Well, you can hardly see Anthony Hopkins on screen now without thinking about Chianti and Flava beans.
That way.
One thing that surprised me as well with Manhunter though was, am I right in saying that they don't actually mention that Hannibal is a cannibal? I'm not entirely sure about that, because I watched the film in 2 halves and I couldn't absolutely swear to it, but they certainly don't make anything.
You didn't have one of those terrible double-sided discs from the early DVD days. You remember them? You had to flip that shit over.
Oh man. Bad times.
Right, no, I can't say for sure, but I think that might actually be true. I think they basically just went, he's a naughty bad man, and he's in naughty bad man prison, but
it's never said quite why he's in. I mean, you get a sense that he is absolutely not to be gone within 3 feet of it any time. When you see the scene where he's in the prison, I think it was a museum that they got for the outside of it, and it's got this...
Can I just say, carry on talking?
It's got this incredible look to it. I mean, it's this bizarre, multi-layered building that looks like some kind of fever dream from fascist Italy. Oh yeah.
Continue talking now.
But I think it's quite appropriate that you bring that out, actually, because one thing I was going to say was that in terms of the cinematography, I think this is one of those films that you could take just about any frame from it, enlarge it, and you could hang it on your wall. It's so amazing.
It's a very, very good looking film. Which is pretty much a hallmark of Man, particularly. I think the 80s was definitely his best period.
Oh, yeah.
He's also got unique ability to get away with stuff like an entirely blue lighting setup in a nighttime scene lit by the moon, you know, which is not an entirely blue light, you have to admit, Michael. But then again, you don't really mind it. But
it makes it work.
Pretty much every shot in it is fantastic. Hence why Tashin made an art book about Michael Mann.
Available now for I was going to say $12.99, but it's probably more than that.
But I think Tom Noohan's a pretty. Is it New? I can't remember if it's Noohan or Noonan. Nanu. It sounds like Nanu. Fucking Robin Williams.
Maybe don't want to go down that way because he does come across as quite an alarming guy.
Yeah. That is two very different performances between him and Ralph Fiennes, and also they give a lot more into his backstory in Red Dragon, and there's like a kind of a history of like familial abuse almost. Whereas he's kind of... I don't think there's as much of that from memory in Red Dragon.
They mention it in the passing, but they certainly don't dwell on it as much as they do in Red Dragon. I mean, I think in Red Dragon it's made a lot more... I mean, they don't put it in quite so many words, but it's much more implied that he was abused as a child, whereas I think in Manhunter it's like maybe mentioned once, and then like the FBI guys have a bit of a laugh at this, and then that's about the only time they ever really bring it up.
Yeah. But there's some great stuff in it. I mean, there's some like really dark imagery in some of the stuff where... the killers is taking, pieces of glass that's taken from a mirror and put it into their eyes and stuff. So there's reflections around the room, and a lot of the shots are basically Will Graham trying to build up a profile of this guy. So it's him going around the house, and there's a lot of atmosphere in the movie. Yeah,
I mean, considering how much of it is kind of just us hearing Will Graham's monologues, he speaks into his little tape recorder. It's impressively atmospheric, just how much you get from these scenes of just a guy walking around the house and kind of trying to think about what the killer might have been thinking at the time. I mean, it's got a kind of... I mean, I think as well with the very 80s soundtrack that they have for the film, I think it gives it this kind of strange, slightly dreamlike quality to it.
It's pretty, but the soundtrack's really good, but it is, as you've said, quite overpowering in points. Yeah. But that's a theme as well that was in The Keep. Now, I know you guys hadn't actually seen it, but if you actually watch it, there's some point, and Michael Mann actually made a point, particularly in The Keep, of telling Tangerine Dream, who made that soundtrack, who also did the soundtrack to his first film, Thief, which you went and watched as well.
I've still not seen it.
This guy.
You like the soundtrack, which I
know the soundtrack's great, and also James Caan. But he kind of deliberately wanted to make it really over the top and punchy, which is quite weird for like a World War II period piece. But it's got kind of
it brings something different to it anyway.
But I really enjoyed Michael Mann's Manhunter. And you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I greatly enjoyed this. My only slight complaint about the film, I would say, is probably the typeface that they chose for the main logo, which I thought was a bit cartoonish and a slightly strange choice for the...
it's very kind of like 1980s pulp
it's
VHS
got a kind of
cover.
Chunky kind of,
Have you seen the... what do you call it? Have you seen the actual DVD cover for it? It's very, very simplistic. It's just like, a shadow reflection with...
I think I've seen a version of it. I wasn't sure if it's the same one. It's like
a couple of primary colours and that's really it. Yeah. Again, it's kind of very kind of simplistic. And I guess they went for that kind of... Rather than making it like a pulpy type film, they changed it. But the more modern cover of it, which I actually picked up in Poundland the other day, is Tom Noonan's face in the tights.
Yeah, I'm not
so
sure.
They've obviously, I think, post Silence of the Lambs maybe changed it to just be a face.
I can see maybe where they're going with that, but I think that's maybe giving the game away a little bit, because I think when you see Noonan come out with the tights over his head, it's quite a freakish image. And actually, that was one thing I meant to say. Just how do you think it comes across the way they present Noonan, because he's almost got this kind of slightly albino quality to him in this film that, Fiennes comes across as more like kind of almost a regular guy, whereas I think with Noonan, I don't know, maybe it's even more...
It's quite deliberately outlandish from his, from the outset. But I think the hair and everything kind of contributes to it as well, and I think he's quite a bit taller than everyone else. And I think Noonan normally kind of plays those slightly... you know, further out characters.
I hate to say it, but there was one scene where he was speaking to his female colleague, and he stands up so much taller than she is. That it actually made me think of the guy in Police Squad. That, you know, his head's always out in the frame.
Out of every shot. I know. One thing I would say about this movie is it's probably, in terms of the way they did it, probably a movie that couldn't have been made in any other decade.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly, I mean, from the style, the music, every way they carried out, and the end kind of like showdown, which is just like very, very loud music and lots of smashing glass. Is pretty. Yeah. It's almost to the point that it's so over stylized it becomes comical.
It is a little bit like that towards the end. I mean, I think I was with them. You know, I quite like that. It's a very heightened 80s style, but it does get a wee bit much towards the end. Not that it takes away from the film, but just be prepared for that.
You just have to set yourself to enjoy it. But I think there's not many kind of like direct horror scares to it, but it is a movie of a lot of atmosphere, and I think it builds up very well.
I think it's got a bit of the slasher film about it in a way,
but yeah. Go and watch it. American Netflix only, I'm afraid. I don't know why. Again, it's another one of those movies. Yeah. Why is it not? And I think, though, Silence of the Lambs is on UK Netflix, so go figure. Goodbye.